Hi students, this is the conclusion of Unit 3. This is Lesson 5, Adulthood and Dying. Our list of objectives have been the same throughout this unit. Now we're just focusing on adulthood. So in adulthood, we're talking about ages 20 to late adulthood. So the time that you've left adolescence into older age is the focus of this. In young adulthood, between the ages of 20 to 40, we are in our physical peak. People who are 20 to 30 years old are as strong as they're ever going to be. In our social development, things are changing because now those human beings are independent and are on their own. Maybe this early marked by people who are in college, maybe go to the military, take on a trade, versus they're earning their own money versus depending on family and friends for support. By age 30, we may transition and reassess a path and change of course. So we have been living in the adult world by the time we're in our 30s for 10 years, and we might reflect back on that, remember, because we're in formal operations, and say, I'm not really happy with this, and make some changes. Young adulthood is marked by the developmental tasks such as earning independence, forming intimate relationships, starting a family, maybe becoming a parent, managing home, a job or career, and assuming responsibilities. So these developmental things marked in young adulthood may be guided by a social clock. Depending on that identity versus role confusion, an individual may be pressured into things like marriage, parenthood, and retirement, not in your young adulthood ages. But social clocks are when we're supposed to do certain things based on cultural agendas, such as marriage. But keep in mind that half of marriages end in divorce. And so your generation, my generation, has really kind of changed what marriage and living with others looks like. And many dating people will choose to live with one another prior to marriage, just because it's like a trial run. Now, what does it take to be in a successful marriage? Well, that depends on individuals, but oftentimes it does lead to higher happiness. Being in a partner relationship leads to higher happiness overall in adulthood. All right, so by middle adulthood, we are in the ages of 40 to 65. This is where I am right now. So one of the things that Erik Erikson would say that I am learning to grapple with are the crisis of generativity versus stagnation. Now, generativity is the reflecting on our lives and determining whether or not we have given to the next generation. So it's creating and generating for the next generation of human beings, making sure that our legacy kind of is intact and that the lessons that we have learned is being passed on to our children, to our grandchildren. This prevents what Erikson called stagnation, looking back on my life and saying, gosh, I really didn't do much for humanity, and maybe I need to try something else. As people approach retirement, retirement age 65, let's just say, like, then what? I mean, I've worked my whole life, and now what am I going to do? So they might choose to do things like start driving an Uber or work out at the community YMCA so that they can still have a social life. They might volunteer at a business profession just so that they can remain giving back to the community. In middle adulthood, women go through the transition of menopause, which ends menstruation and basically means that we can no longer have children. For some females, this is a difficult process physically because hormonal changes lead to that you hear of the term hot flashes, which is actually supposed to be hot flushes. That's not a flash because they can last a long time. The change in bodily hormonal relationships is one that can throw you for a loop. Trust me on that. And one thing I didn't know as entering into older adulthood is that middle adulthood is that menopause is a process. It's not a one and done. It's not a final cycle and now you're okay, I've entered into middle adulthood. It is a process that can take several years. In late adulthood, now, one of the things that are in this PowerPoint are kind of sad, but late adulthood really is actually a time that we're in our happiest in our lifetimes, so theorists say. So in adulthood, 65 and older, We do experience physical changes like losing our strength and abilities, senses less sharp, we don't hear or taste as well. Our vision may become dulled, reaction time slower, we may experience broken bones more easily. Our immune systems can suffer, and that's why, older folks will get their flu shots. Exercise and good diet can help fight these things off, but it's not all bad. This is also a time in older adulthood where people are forming relationships, maybe with new people from the community, from church. My parents are in this late adulthood, and they are forming relationships that they never did before, and I'm really proud of them for doing that. They do keep their thermostats much higher than I would prefer, and the volume of their TV is a little bit louder than I would like too. But I would say they're generally happy. In late adulthood, they look back on their lives and say, have I lived a good life? And some cognitive changes that may be typical include small memory loss, which is normal. The exception is dementia, so serious loss of cognitive functioning. And Alzheimer's is also a exception. Not everybody that has older age has Alzheimer's, but this is a degenerative brain disorder which is marked by dementia and memory loss. In late adulthood, women go on parades wearing these weirdo bikini t-shirts. But like I said, they're the ones who are going to report being pretty happy. They are in a time period that Erickson called ego integrity versus despair. And they look back on their lives to decide whether or not they've had a meaningful transition into late adulthood. So during deterioration and impending death. The ego integrity is, have I lived a good life despite the fact that I may be slowing down? And if you can say, yes, I have, then that satisfaction is going to remain persistent in life. People in older age do report greater happiness, and you can see that in this graphic here. In ages 42 and 45, you're at the lowest of your happiness levels, and then you gradually begin a rise as you transition into late adulthood. So that's promising. We look back on our lives and say, yeah, I did a pretty good job, and despite the fact that I know I'm going to die. One thing we fall victim to when we are older and younger, I would say, is ageism. So that is stereotyping and discriminating based on the age of a person. Older folks may say teens shouldn't be trusted. Teens can't do anything on their own. They always need supervision, and they shouldn't have opinions on politics. They're just not old enough to comprehend what's going on. But we also commit ageism with older adults. You see the old man yells at clouds. Seniors are often stereotyped in the media. But gray is not dull, and these are still human beings that we should respect and be able to learn from. I mean, the older generation that I have my neighbor I'm going to have lunch with today. She's 82 years old, and I look forward to talking to her about this actual topic. We're all going to die at some point, and while you're in adolescence, you're probably not thinking about that much at all. However, being in later adulthood, in middle adulthood, it's something that I have to consider, because what's going to happen after I'm gone? Well, there is one theorist, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a social worker, and she was surrounded by death. And she came up with these 5 stages of grief before death. So let's say somebody gets a terminal illness diagnosis from their doctor. Kubler-Ross said that we go through these different areas of acceptance, and those include denial, no, that can't be right, need a second opinion, anger, why I oughta, it can't be right, I'm mad at God, things like that. Bargaining, well, if you just give me 6 more months, then I'm going to do this, that, the other. Depression, well, it doesn't matter, I'm going to be dead soon, so why should I write the check to pay my bills? And acceptance. While I may die, while I am impending doom, death, I can accept this and live a good life with whatever time that I have. These 5 stages, I think, can also be applied to other aspects of life. So a breakup, a divorce, a stressor, a huge stressful event. I think that you can apply these things as well. But some people are harsh critics of Kubler-Ross's theories and said that she only used like terminal illness as her sample. So this one's up for debate. That's all for this lesson and for this unit. So we end on a sad note, but happy note, because older adulthood is going to be one of the best times of our lives, whether you believe it in adolescence or not. So the best is yet to come.